Welcome back to our channel, Soap fans. Today is a beautiful, thrilling day to dive deep into the absolute masterclass of storytelling we are currently witnessing on our screen. Grab your coffee and settle in, because we have a massive amount of ground to cover regarding the seismic shifts happening in Port Charles. The camera pans across a fractured family, a fractured syndicate, and a fractured mind. We are watching a breathtaking collision of impossible choices. A legendary enforcer choosing his son over his king, a wronged twin weaponizing corporate greed, and a legacy spy descending into the darkest corners of her own psyche. The momentum has shifted, and no one is safe. I feel so incredibly relieved by that monumental scene at Pizzulo's, because to me, it finally proved that the writers understand Jason's ultimate priority. I know a lot of people in the fandom are complaining, saying that Jason leaving the mob is entirely out of character after decades of loyalty, but I genuinely think we're missing the point if we ignore the severe trauma of his WSB captivity and the devastating reality of Sam McCall's death. The way I interpret it, Jason standing in Sonny's office, looking his former boss dead in the eye and refusing to back down, is the most profound character growth we've seen in decades. When Jason said, "I am the only parent Danny has left," the absolute conviction in his voice gave me chills. Every time I think about how Cyrus murdered Sam and Dex, my heart breaks for Danny, and I believe Jason's decision to walk away from the violence is the only logical path forward for a man who has lost so much. I love the way the lighting changed when Jason mentioned Sam's tragic past. The set designers at Pizzulo's cast long, harsh shadows across Sonny's face, perfectly highlighting the massive chasm that is rapidly growing between these two brothers in arms. Sonny feels entirely betrayed, but in my opinion, Sonny's blind spot regarding Rick Lansing is what truly severed this. I think Jason is absolutely right here, and here is why their dialogue backed up my take. Sonny is actively trusting Rick to execute the delicate tactic of buying back the peers from Jen Sidwell. Jason knows all too well how toxic and manipulative Rick can be. I feel like this is the best they've written Jason, because he isn't just blindly following orders anymore. He is analyzing the board and seeing the impending disaster. When Jason told Sonny that he would rather face his unstoppable wrath than leave Danny an orphan, I felt a profound sense of vindication as a longtime. I think the writers are brilliantly contrasting Jason's past as a ruthless enforcer, with his present reality as a desperate protective father. I feel so much empathy for Jason when he explained that continuing on this mob path would only end with him dead or in a federal prison. I believe the blocking in that scene, Jason standing near the door, physically distancing himself from Sonny's desk, was a masterful visual representation of his exit from the underworld. I know some fans want the old Stone Cold back, but I actually think the slow burn of Jason reclaiming his humanity is exactly what's needed, because I feel like it honors the sacrifices Sam made before Cyrus took her life. Now, let's pivot to the absolute genius of Drew Kane's current revenge arc. I literally cheered during that explosive scene at the Quartermain gates when Tracy locked Drew out of the estate, using the ironclad legal power of Monica's will. I know that sounds cruel to cheer for a man being exiled from his family home, but the emotion it sparked in me was pure adrenaline because it finally gave Drew the perfect, unadulterated villain origin story. I feel like this is the best they've written Drew, because he isn't just lashing out with his fists or throwing a tantrum, he's using his immense wealth and sharpened intellect to orchestrate a corporate bloodbath. The way I see it, Tracy just handed her nephew the exact motivation he needed to burn the family legacy to the ground. I think the writer's choice to have Drew secretly fund Lucy Coe's hostile takeover of Deception is a brilliant masterstroke. I genuinely believe that Drew recognizes physical violence won't hurt the Quartermains the way financial ruin will. I feel so captivated by the scenes where Drew is quietly pulling the strings in the background, acting as the invisible benefactor for Lucy's corporate war. The way I interpret it, Drew is aiming for the one thing Michael and Brooklyn cannot protect, their business empire. I love the subtle smirk on Drew's face when he watched Lucy strut into the boardroom, knowing full well that his money was fueling her every move. I think this storyline is a masterclass in soap opera revenge. Anticipating the criticisms, I know a lot of people are saying this Deception storyline is dragging, but I actually think the slow burn is exactly what's needed because I feel like it perfectly sets up Michael Corinthos for a catastrophic fall from grace. Michael is currently strutting around Deception, flexing his newly acquired power as the swing vote after buying Maxie's shares, and he is completely, hilariously oblivious to the fact that his former brother-in-law is funding his demise. I feel so much secondhand embarrassment from Michael when he acts like a ruthless corporate raider, all while Drew is literally plotting to bankrupt him. I believe that Michael's arrogance is the perfect foil to Drew's cold, calculated patience. I also feel incredibly invested in how this impacts Brooklyn. When Drew threatened Brooklyn point blank at the Metro Court pool, promising that the Quartermaines would lose everything by the time he was done, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I think the delivery of that line was phenomenal. It didn't sound like a man venting. It sounded like a man who had been rehearsing his vengeance for months while trapped in his own paralyzed body. I genuinely think we're missing the point if we don't recognize how masterfully Drew is using Brooklyn's own distractions. She is so consumed by framing Willow for Jordan's crash and managing her fragile marriage to Chase that she cannot see the financial guillotine swinging down toward her neck. Finally, we absolutely must talk about Anna Devane and this terrifying, mesmerizing descent into madness. I am completely in awe of the creative decision to have Peter August's hallucinations push Anna toward assassinating Britt Westbourne. When Anna cornered Britt in the hospital stairwell, the sheer coldness in Anna's eyes made me gasp out loud. I feel so deeply unsettled by how perfectly Finola Hughes is playing this psychological fracture. I think the way she tilted her head when the ghostly apparition of Peter whispered in her ear was a phenomenal acting choice, blending vulnerability with lethal intent. I genuinely believe this callback to Anna's 1,985 DVX ruthlessness is the boldest narrative swing the show has taken in years. She is no longer the pristine, morally upright police commissioner. She's a compromised, lethal weapon operating under the delusion of justice. I feel like the writers are brilliantly exploring the long-term trauma of her Windermere captivity. The way I see it, Anna's mind has completely shattered, and Peter is the dark manifestation of her deepest fears and aggressive instincts. I love the way the lighting in Anna's apartment mirrored the shadows of her cell beneath Windermere, visually communicating that she has never truly escaped her imprisonment. I feel so terrified for Britt right now. According to Peter's ghostly whispers, Britt knows entirely too much about Caesar Faison's lingering secrets and poses a direct threat to Anna's safety. I think the irony here is deliciously cruel. Britt finally secured her freedom, survived the saline syringe fake-out, and regained her medical license, only to be hunted by a hallucinating super spy. I feel like Britt's vulnerability in these scenes, especially after being so violently rejected by Jason, makes Anna's stalking even more harrowing. I believe the writers are setting up a tragic collision course, and every time Anna looks at Britt, I can feel the tension radiating through the screen. I also think the dynamic between Anna and Valentine Cassadine is adding a heartbreaking layer to the psychological thriller. Valentine is starting to suspect her instability, but the way Anna coldly pushed him away in her apartment proved to me that she is entirely lost to the hallucination. I feel so much sympathy for Valentine when he tries to reach the woman he loves, only to be met with the icy glare of a 1,985 DVX. I believe that Valentine's insider knowledge and his protective instincts are going to put him directly in the crossfire. I think Anna's refusal to accept his help is a tragic testament to how deeply Peter's voice has infected her. Returning to Jason's storyline, I feel like I need to highlight the specific brilliance of his interactions with Rick Land. When Jason stood in Sonny's office and openly expressed his absolute disgust over Sonny's reliance on Rick, I felt like cheering. I think Jason's assessment of Rick is 100% accurate, and the way the writers are using Rick as the wedge to finally drive Jason out of the mob is inspired. I genuinely believe that Jason sees Rick as the embodiment of everything toxic and treacherous about the syndicate life. I feel like Jason's dialogue warning Sonny that trusting Rick will lead to disaster was delivered with such weary resignation that it perfectly encapsulated his growth. I feel so deeply moved by Jason's commitment to Danny. Every time Jason mentions how Sam's death at the hands of Cyrus completely shattered their family, I am reminded of the incredible stakes involved in his decision. I think the scenes between Jason and Danny at the Quartermaine boathouse are some of the most emotionally resonant moments we've had all year. I believe that Jason is desperately trying to rewrite his own legacy so that Danny doesn't inherit a world of violence and grief. The way I interpret it, Jason's exit from the mob isn't an act of cowardice. It is the ultimate act of paternal sacrifice, and I am entirely here for this beautiful character evolution. Looking deeper into Drew's corporate warfare, I feel like the integration of Lucy Coe into this plot is a stroke of genius. I think having Lucy act as the heavy hitter, secretly bankrolled by Drew's millions, adds a fantastic layer of legacy drama to the deception. I love the scene where Drew remained the invisible puppet master while the Quartermaines scrambled. I believe that Drew's strategy of starving the Quartermaines of their assets is a direct response to the months he spent starved of his own bodily autonomy. I feel like the poetic justice of this revenge is undeniable, even if it threatens characters I love. I genuinely think we're missing the point if we don't acknowledge how Michael and Willow's own toxic drama is blinding them to Drew's impending strength. Michael is so obsessed with his own power at deception, and Willow is so panicked about keeping her own crimes hidden, that neither of them sees the financial tidal wave approaching. I feel like the writers are expertly weaving these separate storylines together, creating a tapestry of hubris and consequence. I think the moment Michael realizes that Drew has bought deception out from under him is going to be television gold. For Anna, I feel like her internal war is the most gripping psychological horror on daytime television. I think the way she seamlessly transitions from the warm, caring grandmother to Emma Scorpio Drake into the cold, calculating assassin being guided by Peter is breathtaking. I believe that Finola Hughes deserves every award for this performance. I love the specific directorial choice to have Peter's reflection appear in the mirror right behind Anna when she was looking at Britt's medical file. I feel like it visually cemented the idea that Peter is now an inescapable part of her own identity. I feel so much anxiety over the tragic irony of Britt's situation. She spent months being gaslit by Ross Cullum with fake saline injections, believing she was dying of Huntington's disease, only to finally discover the truth and win her freedom. I think the fact that she is now the primary target of Anna's hallucination-driven assassination plot is a masterclass in suspense. I believe that Jason's rejection of Britt, his refusal to let her back into his life because he is focusing on Danny, has left her completely isolated and vulnerable to Anna's strike. The way I see it, all the protective barriers around Britt have been stripped away. I think Valentine's desperation to save Anna from herself is going to be the emotional anchor of this storyline. I feel so much tension every time he tries to piece together the clues of her erratic behavior. I believe that Valentine knows the DVX programming better than anyone, and I think he is the only person in Port Charles who can pull Anna back from the brink. However, I feel like Anna's paranoia, fueled by Peter's relentless whispering, is going to force her to view Valentine as the way I interpret the recent scenes, we are marching toward a devastating confrontation between two legendary spies. I genuinely believe that the Quartermain family is entirely unprepared for the reckoning Drew is bringing to them. I think Tracy's decision to banish him from the estate was the fatal catalyst that sealed their doom. I feel like Tracy underestimated the sheer depth of Drew's trauma and the venomous rage that has replaced his former kindness. I love the way Drew sneered at the gates, a silent promise that he would return not as a family member, but as a conqueror. I think the impending collapse of deception is going to fracture the Quartermains in ways they never thought possible. In my opinion, all of these intersecting storylines, Jason's heartbreaking redemption, Drew's calculated corporate vengeance, and Anna's terrifying psychological descent are proving why this show remains an absolute masterpiece. I feel so incredibly invested in these specific characters and the impossible choices they are currently facing. I think the writers are firing on all cylinders, delivering deep, character-driven drama that honors the rich history of Port Charles while pushing everyone into uncharted, dangerous. I believe we are witnessing a golden era of storytelling, and I cannot wait to see how the chips fall. Will Jason's exit truly save Danny, or will Anna's dark hallucinations claim Britt's life before Drew completely bankrupts the Quartermain? Drop your wildest theories below and subscribe for more.